Hi guys, this is Candice from the Beauty School. Today we're going to be looking at hybrid lashes and when and how and where you would apply a hybrid set. So my client has had lashes before. She likes it a little bit more on the natural side, has had classics in the past. However, wanted just a little bit more fullness and a little bit more fluffiness. So I've suggested going a hybrid to keep with that more natural look, but entwining a little bit of fluffiness just to get used to the volume lash. Sometimes going from classic to volume is too big of a jump, and it can be quite overwhelming for the client when they look in the mirror and they see that real full lash. So incorporating a few volume fans is going to help that transition, and I can probably guarantee that the client is going to then come back for a volume next time. So today I'm going to be working with some pre-made fans, purely because these days I like to work with pre-made. It does help fasten up the process. And I'm going to incorporate some classic lashes. So working with the two is going to give it a really nice natural feel, but also with just that little bit of fullness. I'm working with a 5D 0.07 pre-made fan, and I've got a mixed tray. So I've got all the different lengths needed. And I'm actually going to work with a C curl, because the D curl with the pre-made, but the C curl with the classic lash is just going to help soften it even more. Sometimes I find if you go a D curl in a classic, sometimes give it too much of a lift. I really like the balance of using a C and a D. So I prepared my client. She's got really beautiful long lashes. So naturally, I want to go long, but my client likes to keep it a little bit more on the natural side. So we're going to probably go a max length of 11. If I'm finding that's a little bit too on the shorter side, I might go a 12 because I think naturally she's a 12. How I'm going to start is I'm going to pick whether or not I'm going to start with my fans, whether you're making them by yourself or you're using pre-made or pro-made, or if I'm going to start with my classic. What I tend to do is start with my volume, and this is sort of chopped and changed over the years that I've been doing lashes. But what I find is if I start with my volume and I get it to a point where I'm like, that could even just do, I wouldn't even need to, then I know I've sort of made my life a lot easier. I can just chuck in classic sort of in between. So I'm going to pop in my volume lashes, say one every 3 lashes, and then I can just entwine those classic lashes in between. First thing you need to think about is, do you want a classic or do you want a volume on the outer edge and on the inner corner? So it depends if you sort of want that fans look out on the edges or if you just want that singular lash sort of sitting on the edge. The other thing you need to factor in is your client's natural lashes. So if your client has really fine lashes on the edges, you might want to opt for a classic. But if they've got strong lashes on the edges, you can go a fan. So it just depends on the look that you're wanting to go with. Don't forget that you'll be doing your mapping as well. So make sure that step's done at this point, just so you can really follow along with your fans and your classics. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to create a fan at the very edge, just because we're going a bit more natural for my client, but I still want it to feel just that little bit of pop at the edges. So picking up my pre-made fan, tipping it in. Now, if you are working with pre-made or pro-made fans, be mindful of the angle that you're coming in. You need to make sure that that base is stuck down, it's not sort of sitting up. So come in on the angle and give it just a little bit of a wiggle. As you can see that I'm working one eye to the other. The reason why I do this is because of an experience that I once upon a time had, where I used to work one eye at a time. What happened was there was an emergency halfway through and I had to stop. So my client left with one eye done. If I had have worked one eye at a time, at least then she would have been symmetrical, and she would have just come back the next day or whenever it was to fix up the lashes. So now I always do that. Just make sure you've got the same amount of lashes on either side. And especially with a hybrid, you want to make sure that it's symmetrical. So I've got my D curls, my fans on the edges there, giving it a little bit of lift. And I'm just going to come in and create those fuller lashes throughout the lash line. Now I am also thinking about which lashes I'm going to be putting these heavier lashes on compared to a classic. You want to make sure that you're sort of working with your healthier lashes as well, because you want good retention. Okay, so I've got about quarter of the way with my fanning, and I just wanted to stop and just touch on what could go wrong when you are doing a hybrid set. The main thing is the inconsistency. So you might find that you're darker in some areas because you've put more fans than classic. So at this point, just check, just make sure you're even on both sides, that you've got even gap. It doesn't need to necessarily be every second lash or every third lash. Just find the gaps because it'll all come together in the end. Make sure that you are following your mapping so that on both sides you're exactly the same. And if you are working like myself and doing all the fans to start off with, just focus on that. And I'm finding that my client naturally has some gaps in her lashes. So I'm putting the fuller fans there rather than waiting for the classic, just to fill that gap, because otherwise if I leave it for a classic, that gap's still going to be there when it's finished and it's going to look a little off to the client. So just find the perfect lash for those volume, and that's why I start with volume, and then you can just slide in those classics at the end.
A few moments later.
All right, so I've applied my volume lashes to my hybrid set. I've left gaps in between so I can slot in the classic lashes. So I'm just going to be following the same length. Now, like I said before, I'm using a C classic and I've had a D curl for the volume just to get a bit more texture within the lashes. So it's not going to look all flush and straight. I want it to give a bit of dimension and texture to the set. So what I've just got to be mindful of is at this point, I've just got to make sure I'm brushing through, making sure that all my volume fans are sitting nicely, that I'm not missing any little spots which I should be putting a volume fan. You can always come in and put a volume fan there anyway, so it's not a big deal. But I would like to have in my mind I'm focusing on classic at this point, and just making sure, especially if you're using pre-made or pro-made, making sure that the lashes are attached, especially at the base. So I'm actually combing right through from the very root to the tip, making sure that I'm not getting stuck on any, because if that's the case, I just need to remove that and reapply it. That tends to be quite a common thing. I just got a lash then, so that one wasn't attached properly. So I'm just thoroughly going in and making sure I'm brushing them through, because what you'll find is if you're not constantly brushing them, your client will walk away. Once she does her first brush, and you don't know how rough your client's going to be with their lashes, does her first brush and has a few come away, she's not going to be very happy that she's just spent all that money and she's already losing lashes straight away. Okay, so I'm ready to apply my classic lash. I'm going to pop on my magnifying glasses just to make sure I can see, and I'm going to start exactly where I started before, on the outer edge. You can start on the inner corners if that's what you prefer. I tend to chop and change. I do find the inner corners harder, so sometimes I like to start there and get it over and done with, but there's no rule to it. You don't have to start somewhere. It's just personal preference. Now, I've chosen to go with a fan on the outer corner because my client has really nice, healthy, natural lashes. So I'm just going to pull that one gently off to the side and get ready for my classic. Now I'm ready to come in with my 11 because I've used my 11 D curl fan on the edge. I'm coming with my C curl 11 right next door, and I'm just going to slot them in between each of those 11 fans. I'm just going to come in with my 11 classic. So I've just popped some fresh glue on my jade stone here because this glue here, it's becoming a little bit watery around the edges. You can see that it's not that real black color, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for one that sort of sticks up in a bit of a bowl, but it's not flattening out, and that just shows that it's time for some fresh glue. So I've just put that down, ready for my classics. Now with isolation, this is just what I like to do. I like to use my pinky to move the fans out of the way. So especially with your pre-made fans or your pro-made fans, they're just that tiny little bit stiffer. But even if you're using custom-made fans, they still can sit a little bit stiff. So I'm just using my pinky to move them out of the way to help with isolation. Now, because I'm using a C curl, it doesn't sit as curved compared to a D curl fan. So it's going to be slightly a little bit longer than the others, which is what I'm going for. I want that. Our lashes don't naturally all sit at exactly the same length. So my client likes more of a natural look. That's why I'm going for a bit more texture with the C curl and the D curl mix. But if your client likes that real solid shape, keep with the same curl. This part I find quite fun because it's It's really just finding the gap. And at this point, really, like if you look at the fans that are made, it almost looks already done, especially if you've got a client with a lot of lashes, which my client has got a nice amount of lashes. It's really just finding the gaps, popping the classics in, and it feels like there's less work to do. And at this point, what we could do is just click the fingers and I'll see you when it's done. All right guys, so just like that, I've finished my classic lashes. So I'm feeling like we're evenly spaced and we're looking even on both sides. Before I take off this tape, I'm going to give a bit of a nano mist. Now, if you're not familiar with nano misting, it's just putting a really, really light mist over the lashes, and it's going to create just a bit of humidity, a bit of moisture for that glue to cure, and it's going to help disperse any of the fumes. So usually you can come in at about this distance, which I think is about 20 centimeters, and it's fine. This one's really, really high pressure, so I'm gonna do a little bit further back and a little bit lower. Just do, you know, about 5-10 seconds, help to disperse those fumes, help cure that glue, and then I can remove the tape. And you just wanna make sure that you don't do too much of this nano misting, because what can happen is shock curing, which you'll notice if you get white little patches on the base of the lashes where the glue is, that's shock curing, and pretty much the glue has polymerized. What's then going to happen is, for one, it's a bit unsightly with the white, but also the retention's going to be compromised, so the lashes are not going to last. So just a really fine mist is enough. Let that all sort of set while you take off the tape or the pads, whatever you're using. By that point, the client should be ready to open their eyes. So we've finished our hybrid set. Things to keep in mind when creating a hybrid is distance in between if you're fanning first, keeping the lengths similar. If you're going for a more textured look, you can go a D curl and a C curl. You can always mix it up, and keeping an eye on any gaps. And there's no rule. You don't have to do volume classic. If there's a bigger gap, maybe put 2 volumes. Ultimately, a hybrid set is for a more textured, natural look. So don't be too pedantic, otherwise you're going to be there all day. So we'll get our client to open her eyes and have a look at the beautiful finished product. Like I said, we went an 11 as the longest and an 8 in the corner, as our client likes a more natural length. Nano misting to get rid of those fumes and to get your client coming back every 3 weeks. And you'll just find that you'll naturally just find where the volume lash sits and the classic lash sits. And it doesn't have to be in a pattern like that. So if you found that this video was helpful or you enjoyed it, please make sure you press that like button, press that notification button as well for any new videos that we upload, and subscribe. Don't forget those questions. We love comments, and we hope to see you in another video. See you next time.